Failing forward. Okay, so I want to add something too. We've had a few connections in advance of my standing here in this moment, and one of them is talking about what our theme was going to be. So already we are primed for this idea that we can stop waiting. I think one of the lines in that song was, "I may make a few mistakes this time, but I'm not waiting." So we're not waiting anymore. And the other thing that I want to add that I got to remember when I was chatting with someone out in the Waterhouse Social Hall is that Rosh Hashanah begins tomorrow evening at sundown. Is that right? This evening at sundown. Yes, excuse me. And that is another celebration. Not only is it the Jewish New Year, it goes in line, of course, with the seasons. And it goes in line, of course, with this idea that we have opportunities to let some things go and begin anew and set some new intentions. So today we're talking about failing forward. Now, failure is defined as a lack of success, an unsuccessful person, enterprise, or thing, ouch, an omission of expected or required action, lack or deficiency of a certain quality. There was a list of synonyms that was about 3 pages long, which I decided to tear up and put in the recycle bin. They were loaded with judgment. Of course, it wasn't just enough to say, okay, hold on just a second, people. We're going to do something here. Are you ready? So this is part of failing forward. You know, Reverend Sonny is taller than me, and I think that we had this up higher last week. So hold on. Okay, never mind. See? I'm doing that like a pro. Last week, when I was singing one of my songs, perfect in rehearsal, week after week, I got up here and got all excited and kept going past the turn. Everybody came with me, and we failed like pros. So anyway, we load on all kinds of judgment about these misses, these mistakes. Many of you in New Thought, or perhaps you're just fans of motivational speakers, have heard the idea that the word sin comes from a root simply meaning to miss the mark. Now, if you actually practice archery, or maybe you like to shoot something else, you don't beat yourself up for missing. You practice, you find out what causes you to hit your target better, and you do it again. But I think we all already know that if we beat ourselves up for not getting it right on the first try, we're going to sit down and we're going to give up. And we're never going to know what it's like to reach that goal, to achieve that thing. Okay, so we're going to put this over here, and that way we can all see each other. All right. So needless to say, this concept of failure is also loaded with judgment, which makes it harder and harder to try anything at all. Here's another thing. Many of us were lovingly and with good intention guided by our parents and our teachers and our coaches to hold back and dial it down. We may have been made fun of by our peers. We may have picked up all kinds of reasons why it's not safe to take initiative. And if you identify with that, like I do sometimes, you may also have areas in your life where you only dream, you only hope, you only wish, and never do. And you may reach a point in your life where you start to have concerns about that, maybe even regrets about it. And you think, gosh, I'm going to bust out and do this thing anyway. You could have been told when you were a child that you don't sing very well, so you stopped, and it wasn't true. Your first time writing something and reading it to your classmates may have been, a mess up, and it wasn't true. So when we look at failing forward, we have an opportunity to re-examine some of those messages that we've gathered earlier in life and let them go. We learn here that the law of cause and effect does not judge. Shakespeare also said there's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so, right? Well, that's what we teach here. Is it good? Well, is that what you think? Is it bad? Is that what you think? What if you remember that the law is impersonal and don't call it either? Just keep going. So we're going to redefine what it means to fail. What if we're just not there yet? What if every seeming failure is a step toward our success? What if failure is success? How about this? Has anybody ever, well, let me back up here. Think of something you're already good at. Okay? Did you do it perfectly the first time? If you did, raise your hand. Okay, I don't see any hands. Perfect the first time? I doubt it. Except for breathing, you probably got that one. So think about riding a bike. Definitely. Fell down. Epic fail is the way that started. How about learning a language, right? Learning to talk, learning to communicate. Well, gosh, every one of us in this room, I think, knows how to walk at this point. Okay, if there are any tiny ones who don't know how to do that yet, you will, and you'll start with an epic fail, right? I know epic is a judgment, but it's a really popular term, so I decided to use it, okay? Here's the deal. Whether you're learning something for the first time or learning it again, this is part of the equation. How many of you had to learn to walk again after an injury or an illness or an accident? Okay, look at the hands now. I did too. I had a couple months of immobility. I was posting pictures of me, lying on my back and trying to work with my computer like this. Finally just let go and save that for later. Some people have or are in the process of learning how to speak again after an injury or an illness. Anybody have to do that? We know some people who are doing that right now. So again, if we can remove the judgment and accept that this thing called failure is part of how we move toward our success, we can recapture all of that energy and attention that we've been spending on beating ourselves up or judging one another for not being perfect the first time out of the gate and put it towards that success. So here are a couple of things to help us with that. Failing is a learning opportunity. Isn't that nice? And you get like a muffin and some blueberries and I like to do a lot of my growing in coffee houses. Anybody else like to do that? Okay. I say I can't tell you which one I'm in because then I wouldn't be alone, right? And I wouldn't be able to do that work. Here's another one. FAIL stands for First Attempt in Learning. Isn't that great? Could you convert some of your firsts that you perceive as failures into that? I think I can remember that. It's 4 words. It's an acronym, right? I think I can remember that. So here's another thing. Ernest Holmes says there is no process of healing. He says there is generally a process in healing, and this process is the time and effort which we undergo in our realization of truth. However long it takes, and whatever we need to do in order to remember the truth about ourselves and the thing that we are attempting to do, that's how long it's going to take, and that's what it's going to take for us to succeed. Nobody else's measurement. We get to decide. Okay. Some of us, by the way, have also learned to overcome fears of a disease or a trauma returning. Some of us have learned and dared to love again. You see how valuable this is? It gets us off the floor and back in the game by redefining failure. Okay. By the way, there's also nothing wrong with failing. There's everything right about it because it's how we learn. We've all heard this word. We're probably tired of it. Did we hear it a lot during the pandemic, which apparently is over, although the numbers would indicate otherwise? We're just done with it. Right? Resilience. Some people say, I don't want to bounce back. I want to move forward. Well, we're going to talk about both. Resilience is very handy. It is the way that we bounce back. And we each have that quality within us. Here are some factors of resilience. Now, if you look this up on positivepsychology.com, you'll see there's actually about 12 or 15. There's a lot more than just 3. But I like these 3. I saw them on another, I hang out in Canva. Anybody else do that? Okay, so it had a couple of road signs, and it said self-control, sense of humor, social support. Self-control, well, that doesn't sound like very much fun. But let's think of it this way. Self-control is part of what we do here at Centers for Spiritual Living. What do we mean by that? Well, we teach, for example, that it is done unto us as we believe. We teach, if you want to look at it from a quantum physics point of view, that what we measure for, according to the observer effect, is what we get. It is the outcome that shows up because the stuff of life responds to the quality of observation and shows up according to it. Is that mind-blowing or what? Okay? Because what we get, we give. Because what goes around comes around. Because what we put out, we get back. We recognize that if we exercise some self-control about what we think, that's going to influence immediately what we feel. It's going to cook up an emotional state and trigger the creative process in a way that is favorable, preferable, something that we actually chose consciously. And it's going to influence what comes out of our mouths and what we do. It's going to influence how we dial into all of the infinite possibilities in life and literally choose something as our experience. Do you want your experience to be the bottom step or the top one? It's up to you and it's up to me. So when we say self-control, we mean that dominion over our thoughts leads to dominion in our experiences. All right. So what about a sense of humor? Anybody? Do you find that helps you get up off the mat? I know it helps me. Now, sometimes I've had experiences in my work life, not in ministry, but in another career, where I was so tired and there was just like no break in sight that I kind of got hysterical. Me and a coworker, we did all of our work, but we were just in hysterics. So I know that Spirit provides us with different types of humor for different occasions. You know those riddles or whatever they are that say, if you were stranded on an island, what would you bring with you? I would bring a sense of humor. I think that would be a really good one to bring along. But of course, you don't plan on getting stranded, so none of it makes sense. Definitely. But sometimes laughter is the only thing that will get us to get up, to let go, to look at the bright side, and to be willing to try again. Think about that. It feels tougher as an adult to learn to walk again. It feels tougher as an adult who's been hurt to learn to love again. It feels tougher as an adult, well, as a young person as well, who's experienced trauma of any kind, to imagine that the world is safe. If it can be challenging if you've always thought that you're nobody, to dare to think of yourself as somebody, okay? And a sense of humor can help you do that. So here's the other one that I love: social support. I just love that all of these things that we thought were good for us have been proven to be so, especially the more recent research in positive psychology. So positive psychology and some others suggest that social support is a key ingredient in resilience, in bouncing back. Why is that? Do we do stuff well alone? Anybody? Now, granted, those of us who are introverts, or even half of an introvert, require some time alone. Of course we do. To be one with the one, to know ourselves, to be in stillness, to tap into the answers which lie within us. We need that. We also need each other. We need each other. They say that connection, belonging, and intimacy, which I call closeness so we don't start causing confusion, are essential human needs. People in recovery have already heard that connection is the opposite of addiction. Connection is the opposite of any illness, any dis-ease. So, do you have someone that you can be totally honest with? Do you have someone that you can tell your story to who will neither judge you nor try to fix you and tell you what you need? If you don't, I would consider asking for some redefinitions and some new agreements in your relationships, or consider shopping around for some that provide you with that. Here's the other beautiful side of that coin. Are you someone? Or can you? Will you be someone for others in your sphere who can and will listen, will not judge, will not try to fix or advise, just simply be there? And can you and will you laugh together? I have a funny little story. When I was in Prac 1, which is back in the cornfield with Dr. Barbara, and I was much younger, we did a check-in at the beginning of class, and everybody was supposed to say, "Hi, my name is," and, things are pretty good, or, "I'm having a tough time at work, but I'm okay." In like one breath check-in. Well, I checked in with a whole soap opera of my social drama, and Barbara said, "Marcia, I invite you, in fact, I encourage you to go out and make sure to build yourself a network of support." She said that what we were going to learn in class was going to allow us to tap into that and find that for ourselves and eventually help others to do the same. And check-in was not group therapy. I had moved and gotten disconnected from my support networks. I went right out, I looked them up, and I started going again. And what do you know? I had my mutual support groups, I had my therapy, I had my practitioner class, and my life started working. Don't make any one person in your life it. Don't make any one place in your life it. That is too much of a burden to place on one another. Don't say, "Are you my mommy? Are you my daddy? Are you my source?" We all have our own source connection. I tell people, don't be a power strip. Show others how to plug into their own connection directly and celebrate life together. We can't be all to all, and yet we all need that connection, that belonging, and that closeness. We need to be safe, to be ourselves, and to unlearn those things that bound us in the past. Okay, I'm a little passionate about that. So here's another thing, true grit. Well, actually, I couldn't find a slide that just said grit, so we're going for true grit. You think of the mushroom farmers, the ice road truckers, or John Wayne out in the wild, wild west, with the dust and the whatever those dust things are flying around and pistols drawn. There's some part of you that has this quality in either a realized sense or a potential sense. Here are some of the factors of grit. Passion, right? Resilience, we just talked about that. Hardiness, ambition, tenacity, perseverance. Well, guess what? All of these are qualities of spirit. We possess them already. They may be unrecognized and unrealized, and it may be a little awkward at first when we try them on for size. Like, excuse me, I'm learning ambition this week, so I might be a little annoying. So who cares? We have passion. Spirit is constantly seeking form and embodiment and expression and experience by means of us. Resilience. Nature is showing us through seasons and cycles that everything bounces back and comes back better. Hardiness. We're already born knowing how to live. Ambition. Again, Spirit's looking for a new good time. There's always something more. There's always something more. So we have that within us. Tenacity. I was thinking about this too. How many have a good capacity for hanging on? Well, what if, now that finger doesn't want to let go. Okay. What if instead of hanging on to stuff that's untrue, that's not working, we use that same capacity to hold on to what is true and what does work? Wouldn't that be better use of that skill? But if you think about it, and perseverance as well, we do have all of these qualities. We really do. Because Spirit is all there is, and we are one with Spirit, and we're made of the same stuff. That has to be so. Okay, I got a quick one for you. In this spot, maybe this stage or maybe the other one before this one was built, on September 30th, 2001, I was ordained. There's my white rose, see? So I wanted to acknowledge that the journey to here was simply a journey of healing. It was simply a journey of wanting to understand more, of wanting to feel better. And I thought that every time I understood a little bit more, I felt a little bit better. So I kept going. And guess what? One day I ended up a practitioner. I'm like, oh my God. And people filed in. We used to meet with them in these chairs around the sanctuary. And I got a really, really big prayer request. My very first time being a practitioner. It was someone with stage 4 cancer, and the whole family said, we hear that you do healing prayer here. And I'm like, yes, yes. We had an extraordinary time. And our spiritual mind treatment, our spiritual work together extended that person's life and gave that family hope and more time with each other. So being willing to fail forward takes you to unexpected places and experiences. And isn't that so much better than holding back and playing it safe and keeping your suitcase in a safe place but never packing it? Right? Go ahead. Take a chance. Make a mistake. Make a fool of yourself. You will be applauded. We watched this documentary on Wednesday evening here about gratitude. And there was this one woman who was teaching female inmates either who were still in prison or had just gotten out of prison. And boy, did they have a lot of ideas in their minds that needed to change, that were limiting them. They did improv, and they learned how to do stand-up comedy, too. It was so freeing. It was like, let's make mistakes on purpose and free ourselves. So, this is what I have to say in closing. Ernest Holmes says this. He says, just keep on knocking. By the way, this is from This Thing Called You, and it's page 41, paragraph 2. You can buy it in the bookstore. Just keep on knocking at the doorway of your consciousness until every no becomes a yes, every negation an affirmation, every fear a faith. You cannot fail if you remain steadfast. Finally, the fetters of bondage will drop from you. You will walk out of your self-imposed prison only to discover that the door was never really locked and the windows were not actually barred. You were bound merely by chains of unbelief. And he goes on to say this. We have within us a power that is greater than anything we shall ever contact in the outer, a power that can overcome every obstacle in our life. So my invitation to you is simply this. Let's use that power. Let's use that power. Whether you are in your first decade or your 8th decade or 9th or whatever it is never too late. These things are infinite. They are ingredients of who we are. They will never run out. There is no expiration date. So join with me in saying to this life that awaits you, yes, 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 and so it is. Namaste.